Kayla was certain she had double-checked every lock. The night was unusually quiet. No cars on the street, no neighbors chatting over fences, just the hum of her refrigerator and the soft whoosh of the central heating. She had moved into this small bungalow 2 weeks ago, thrilled to have a place of her own. Yet from the first day, she'd had the unsettling feeling of being watched. She was in the living room, scrolling through messages on her phone. Occasionally, she glanced at the window, half expecting to see a face peering in. The curtains were drawn, but an odd apprehension gnawed at her stomach. It's just nerves, she told herself. She'd had a busy day at work, and maybe the new environment was making her edgy. Around 10 p.m., Kayla decided it was time to wind down. She switched off the TV and stood up, stretching. After a final check of the front door, locked and bolted, she headed to the kitchen to rinse her mug. That's when she heard the noise, a faint scrape against the back door. She paused, heartbeat accelerating. The scrape came again, a soft metallic sound as if someone was testing the doorknob from the outside. Her first instinct was to call the police, but then she wondered if it was just a raccoon or a stray cat scratching at the door. She crept toward the back entrance, flipping on the porch light. Through the door's small window, she saw no animal, only the faint silhouette of a person hunched near the lock. Adrenaline surged. She stumbled backward, heart pounding. Someone's trying to get in. She fumbled for her phone, nearly dropping it on the tile. With trembling hands, she dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Came the operator's calm voice. There's someone at my back door, Kayla managed, voice shaking. They're trying to break in. As she spoke, the doorknob jiggled violently, rattling the thin door in its frame. The intruder must have heard her voice because he paused for a moment. Then came a stronger shove, causing the door to bow inward. Police are on the way, the operator said. Find a safe place to hide. Do not confront them. Kayla's hands shook so badly she could barely hold her phone. She glanced around the kitchen. Where to hide? The pantry? Under the table? None of it felt secure. She remembered the door leading to the garage. Maybe she could slip into her car if she could get there undetected. But what if the intruder ran around the side? The door rattled again, accompanied by a low grunt. The flimsy chain lock gave a pitiful little cling. He's going to get in, Kayla realized with terror. She ended the 911 call, turned off the kitchen light, and darted into the hallway. Every shadow felt threatening as she rushed to her bedroom. She locked that door too, though it felt like a trivial barrier. The chain lock on the back door snapped with a sharp crack, sending her pulse skyrocketing. He's inside now. She fumbled through her nightstand, grabbing the small wooden bat her father had given her for emergencies. It felt woefully inadequate. Footsteps sounded on the kitchen tile, careful, deliberate steps. Kayla covered her mouth to stifle a whimper. The bedroom door had no peephole, so she pressed her ear against the wood. The intruder's steps grew louder, heading straight down the hallway. He's coming this way. Instinct told her to hide in the closet, but that would leave her trapped. Instead, she rushed to the window, quietly sliding it open. Her heart hammered so loud she feared the intruder would hear it. If she could climb out onto the small ledge and drop into the bushes, she might escape. But she had to be quick. Behind her, the bedroom doorknob jiggled. A cold wave of fear froze her in place. She heard him whisper something inaudible, like a soft curse. Then came a heavy thud on the door. He was kicking it. Kayla forced herself to climb onto the windowsill. The wind outside felt shockingly cold against her cheeks. The door splintered under a second blow. She willed herself not to look back. Taking a deep breath, she heaved herself through the window, tumbling into the flower bed below. A sharp pain shot through her ankle, but she forced herself to ignore it. The intruder must have realized what she was doing because the bedroom light suddenly flipped on. Kayla scrambled to her feet, limping around the side of the house. She could hear sirens in the distance, blessedly close. Ahead, the front gate loomed, and she fumbled with the latch. Footsteps crunched behind her. He was outside too, chasing her. She could almost feel his presence just feet away. She sprinted onto the front lawn, adrenaline overriding pain. Blue and red lights washed over her. 2 police cars screeched to a stop. Doors slammed, and Kayla collapsed onto her knees, tears of relief streaming down her face. An officer rushed to her side. weapon drawn. "There," Kayla pointed, breath ragged. He's behind the house." The second officer darted down the driveway. Kayla heard a shout of "Stop," followed by a tense scuffle. Moments later, the officer returned, pinning a hooded man's arms behind his back. His face was partially obscured, but Kayla caught a glimpse of his eyes, cold, predatory. He glared at her as the officer shoved him into the squad car. "You're safe now," the first officer murmured, helping Kayla to her feet. Her ankle throbbed, but she hardly noticed through the waves of relief. Later, as paramedics checked her vitals, she stared at her small bungalow with shattered doors and windows. She realized how fragile the illusion of safety could be. The intruder said nothing as he was driven away, but the weight of his silent stare stuck with her. Kayla promised herself that from now on, she'd take every precaution, and then some. Survival had taught her that every bolt and lock mattered, but more importantly, she learned to trust her instincts. Even as dawn broke, bathing the house in soft golden light, she couldn't erase the memory of those footsteps in the dark, or the door splintering beneath the intruder's force. She knew she'd likely never sleep as soundly again. Yet, the sight of the rising sun reminded her she was alive, and for that, she was grateful. Ivy first sensed something was off when she found a dusty picture frame on the mantel. It showed a woman in a white dress smiling faintly at the camera. The photograph was decades old, probably from the 1920s, and it came with the house when Ivy moved in. The real estate agent had brushed it off as just an old family photo. But Ivy felt drawn to it, unsettled yet curious. That night, rain drummed on the roof as Ivy organized her boxes. The house was larger than she needed, but she couldn't resist the low price. Plus, she loved the vintage architecture: arched doorways, ornate wooden banisters, and antique doorknobs. There was something romantic about living in a place with history. Around midnight, she headed upstairs, only to hear an odd creaking noise behind her. She stopped on the stairs, heart fluttering, listening. The house settled, beams shifting in the wind. Old house, old sounds, she told herself, though goosebumps prickled her arms. She entered the master bedroom, flipping on the light. Thunder rattled the window. As she changed into pajamas, she caught a faint reflection in the mirror. Someone gliding past the open door. Ivy spun around. No one was there. She peered into the hallway, seeing only shadows. Her mind played with possibilities. A trick of the light, sleepiness, or perhaps her imagination running wild. The next day, she was busy unpacking the living room. She set the old photo on a table, deciding she might keep it as a quirky decoration. The woman's eyes in the photo seemed almost alive, as though they followed Ivy whenever she moved. Don't be silly, she thought, but she found herself turning the frame face down more than once. That evening, she settled in for a quiet night. Rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and humid. She microwaved dinner and ate in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She nearly dropped her fork when she heard a soft sob, like someone crying in the next room. Heart thudding, she set her plate aside. "Hello?" she called, feeling foolish. No answer. The sobbing quieted, replaced by a faint hush. She stood up, carefully checking the dining room, then the hallway. Empty. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Returning to the living room, she noticed the photograph on the table had fallen flat, as if knocked over. A cold draft brushed her ankles. "Okay, this is weird," she whispered. She righted the frame, hesitating over the woman's distant gaze. The corners of the photo looked burnt, as if singed. Had she missed that before? That night, Ivy slept fitfully, haunted by indistinct dreams of a woman drifting through corridors, wearing a white dress spattered with ash or soot. At 3 a.m., she jolted awake to the sound of footsteps in the hall. She grabbed her phone, flicked on the flashlight, and tiptoed outside the bedroom. Nothing. Yet a chill filled the air, and a faint scent of smoke tickled her nose. She followed the smell down the hallway to a small, locked door she hadn't noticed before. Jiggle as she might, it wouldn't open. She resolved to find the key in the morning. Returning to bed, she left the hall light on, too unsettled to sleep in darkness. The next day, rummaging through drawers in the kitchen, Ivy discovered an old skeleton key. She had a hunch it belonged to the locked door. Climbing the stairs, she could almost sense a presence hovering behind her. The door creaked open under the key's pressure, revealing a tiny storage space filled with dusty boxes and cloth-covered items. She coughed at the stale air, shining a flashlight around. Stacked in the corner were charred wooden beams and singed furniture, remnants of some past fire. She shuddered, feeling an overwhelming sadness wash over her. Then she noticed a trunk, partially melted. Inside, she found scorched letters describing a fire that had ravaged the house decades ago. One letter read, "Charlotte lost everything in the flames. She's gone, but I feel her spirit can't leave this place." The name Charlotte reverberated in Ivy's mind. Could Charlotte be the woman in the photo? A wave of empathy mingled with dread. She carefully shut the trunk, returning downstairs. The photograph seemed to watch her approach. She whispered, "Charlotte, is that you?" Feeling foolish, she decided to place the frame on the mantel, thinking it might appease this restless presence. That evening, she lit a few candles in the living room, hoping the gentle glow would ease her nerves. She spoke aloud, softly. "If you're here, Charlotte, I'm not trying to disturb you. I just want to understand." The house responded with silence. She tried to occupy herself with a book, but her thoughts kept drifting to the sobs and the footsteps. Close to midnight, a sudden gust snuffed out her candles. She shot to her feet. Standing near the mantel was a faint figure of a woman, her dress fluttering as though caught in an invisible breeze. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, eyes reflecting sorrow. Ivy's breath caught. She could see the outlines of the room right through the woman's form. She wanted to run, but something in the ghost's expression halted her. A silent plea glimmered in those eyes, an anguish that demanded compassion. Summoning courage, Ivy whispered, "Charlotte?" The apparition's lips parted, a barely audible moan escaping. Then she vanished, leaving the room dark and cold. Ivy's hands trembled as she lit the candles again. She sensed no malice, only heartbreak. She's trapped, Ivy realized, remembering the letter. Charlotte lost everything, perishing in the fire. Maybe her spirit lingered, unable to move on. Over the following days, Ivy tried various ways to help Charlotte find peace. She placed fresh flowers where the old trunk was kept, offered gentle words, and even searched for local records about the fire. She learned Charlotte had died in the upstairs hallway, calling out for help that never arrived in time. Ivy felt a pang of grief as she read the account in a fragile newspaper clipping. On a stormy night, just as a fresh bout of rain battered the roof, Ivy mustered courage. She retrieved Charlotte's photo, the old letters, and the singed personal items from the trunk. Arranging them in the hallway where Charlotte had drawn her last breath, Ivy lit a small candle. She spoke gently. "Charlotte, I'm returning these to you. May they guide you to rest." A swirl of cold air made the candle flicker, and Ivy's eyes teared up. "I'm sorry for what happened to you." A hush fell. Then, in the candlelight, Charlotte's figure appeared once more, less distinct yet calmer. She cast Ivy a forlorn, grateful look. A final tear shimmered on her cheek, and she faded, the candle's flame dancing until it settled. Ivy felt the heaviness lift, replaced by a quiet hush. She sensed Charlotte's presence no longer lingered with sorrow, but rather with relief. Though the house still moaned and creaked, Ivy slept soundly that night. The photograph remained on the mantel, but the chill around it was gone. In the morning, the sun streamed through the windows, bathing the old walls in warmth. The faint smell of smoke had vanished. Ivy never heard the sobs again. Charlotte's spirit at last found peace. Noah almost canceled his plans to stay home that weekend, but his friends persuaded him to go camping. The problem was, on the day of the trip, he woke with a fever. So he found himself alone in his parents' house while they were away. A large, suburban two-story nestled on a quiet street. He was determined to rest up and watch some movies to pass the time. Friday night arrived, and Noah settled on the couch in the living room. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the shutters. Around 9 p.m., he heard the doorbell ring. Peering through the front window, he saw 3 men standing on the porch. They wore plain dark jackets, hoods drawn up against the chilly air. Noah opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain latched. Can I help you?" he asked. The men exchanged glances, then one stepped forward, speaking in a friendly tone that felt oddly forced. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said. "Our car broke down a few blocks away, and our phones died. Could we come in and use yours?" His voice carried an edge that set Noah's nerves on alert. Noah swallowed. I don't think so," he stammered. "I can call a tow truck for you, though." Something about the man's eyes made his skin crawl. "That'd be great," the man replied. Then one of the others, standing behind, muttered something too low to catch. The first man shot him a warning look, then turned back to Noah with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Actually, why don't you let us in while you make the call? It's freezing out here." Noah's heart hammered. "Sorry," he repeated, voice unsteady. "I have a bad cold, and I don't want to get anyone sick." He closed the door a little more, suspecting their story was a lie. The man's facade cracked. "We won't take long," he insisted, pressing against the door. Noah slammed it shut and quickly locked it. Through the peephole, he saw anger flicker across the man's face. The trio exchanged frustrated words. Noah trembled, backing away. He flicked the porch light off, hoping they'd leave. 10 minutes later, Noah peeked out again. The porch was empty. Relief flooded him. Maybe they'd given up. He texted a friend about the encounter, but his friend simply joked, "Dude, maybe they really needed help." Yet Noah couldn't shake the nagging dread that it wasn't that simple. Around 11 p.m., as Noah tried to watch a comedy to calm his nerves, a loud knock came at the back door. He nearly jumped off the couch. Who knocks on the back door? He grabbed his phone and tiptoed to the kitchen. The back door had a small window. Lifting the corner of the curtain, he froze. One of the same men stood outside, cupping his hands to peer in. A wave of panic seized him. He dialed 911. While it rang, the man outside tapped the glass, calling out softly, "Come on, dude, just open up." Noah saw two other figures lurking in the yard's darkness. 911, what's your emergency?" "There are 3 men outside my house," Noah whispered. "They showed up earlier at the front door. Now they're at the back." A sudden, violent jolt rattled the door, making Noah jump. The operator assured him the police were on the way, urging him to stay on the line. Noah rushed upstairs, phone pressed to his ear, footsteps pounding on each step. Through a window in the upstairs hallway, he could see the intruders below, one fiddling with something that looked like a crowbar. "Stay quiet," the operator said calmly. "They're looking for an easy way in. Officers will be there soon." Noah ducked into his bedroom, locking the door behind him. He turned off the lights, heart pounding as he crouched by the window. From this vantage point, he saw the men outside, checking windows. They circled around, whispering to each other, though he couldn't make out the words. Then one yanked at a basement window well, trying to pry it open. "Where are the cops?" Noah's mind screamed. He tried to remain calm, repeating the operator's words like a mantra. Suddenly, headlights swept across the street. A single police cruiser arrived, flashing red and blue lights. Noah's relief was instant. He heard the men curse, footsteps scurrying away. Rushing to another window, he saw one man vault the neighbor's fence while another scrambled between shrubs. A third bolted toward a side alley. The police officer gave chase on foot, radio crackling in the crisp night air. Noah stayed put, phone clenched tight, until a second patrol car pulled up. An officer knocked on the front door, announcing himself. Noah unlatched every bolt, letting them in. His breath came in ragged gasps as he explained the situation, pointing to where the men had tried to break in. Police searched the yard, shining flashlights across the backyard and basement windows. Though they found pry marks and footprints, the men were gone. One officer told Noah they'd had reports of a group matching the description attempting similar home entries. They often give an excuse: car trouble, dead phone. "Trying to get victims to open the door," he explained. "You did the right thing, not letting them in." Noah's parents returned the next day, shocked to see police cars on their block. They comforted him, grateful he was unharmed. Still, the fear lingered. He wondered if the trio would return, or if they'd simply move on to a different house. For weeks, every time the doorbell rang, he felt his stomach twist. Eventually, the police caught 2 suspects who matched Noah's description, wanted in connection with multiple break-ins. Noah breathed easier, though nights alone still triggered flashbacks of that crowbar scraping the back door. He replaced every lock, installed security cameras, and double-checked every window before bed. In time, he regained a sense of normalcy, cautious yet determined not to let fear rule his life. The memory of 3 men on the porch, lying through forced grins, remained etched in his mind. He never forgot how quickly a friendly knock could become a threat. Yet he also learned the importance of trusting his instincts, and trusting that a locked door could sometimes be all that stood between safety and danger.